In the chronicles of history, few names inspire as much mystery and intrigue as the Knights Templar. They were warrior monks, crusaders, and the world's first international bankers. This is the story of how a small band of pious knights rose to become the most powerful organization in Christendom, and how that power led to their sudden and brutal destruction. Our story begins in Jerusalem, in the year 1119. The First Crusade had recently concluded, but the roads to the Holy Land were still incredibly dangerous for Christian pilgrims. They would dedicate their lives to protecting these pilgrims from bandits and thieves. They were known as the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, or simply, the Templars. A French knight named Auguste de Payens, along with 8 other knights, made a solemn vow. They were a humble order, taking vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. But their fortunes changed when they gained the backing of Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the most influential churchmen in Europe. For years, they were a small and obscure group. With his support, the Templars received the official blessing of the Pope in 1129. They were no longer just bodyguards. They were a formal military order of the Catholic Church. They were granted special privileges. They answered to no king or bishop, only to the Pope himself. Their discipline and courage on the battlefield were legendary. He could then travel to the Holy Land without carrying his wealth. It was safe, secure, and revolutionary. This made them indispensable. They were exempt from all local taxes. Donations began to pour in from across Europe. The order became entrusted with immense fortunes, and their own wealth grew beyond imagination. The order grew rapidly in wealth and power. They adopted their famous uniform, a white mantle, symbolizing their purity, emblazoned with a bold red cross, symbolizing their martyrdom. They became the elite fighting force of the Crusades. They were the shock troops, the first into battle and the last to retreat. They even owned their own fleet of ships. They became a powerful, independent, international corporation. As the Crusades began to fail, the Templars' primary military purpose started to fade. He sought their independence as an insult to his royal authority. He decided the Templars had to be destroyed. In 1291, the city of Acre, the last Crusader stronghold, fell, and one very powerful man began to see them not as allies, but as a threat. Philip was ambitious, ruthless, and deeply in debt, and his biggest creditor was the Knights Templar. They were taken completely by surprise. Their grandmaster, Jacques de Molay, was also captured. This vast network allowed them to create an early form of credit. They were stretched on the rack, their feet were burned, and they were starved. They confessed to heresy, to sodomy, to worshipping idols. Anything to make the pain stop. On Friday, October 13, 1307, King Philip's orders were carried out. He pressured the Pope Clement V to authorize a formal church-wide trial against the Templars. He accused the Templars of heresy, of spitting on the cross during their secret initiation rites, and of worshipping a strange idol head named Bat. They moved their headquarters to their lavish temple in Paris. He reluctantly agreed. The trials that followed were a sham, based on confessions extracted through torture. He would not just disband the order, he would annihilate its reputation forever. As the flames consumed him, legend says he issued a final, powerful curse. In a strange twist of fate, both the Pope and the King died within months. Their military role was over, but their wealth remained. The Templars became too powerful, too wealthy, and too independent. The Knights Templar, once the most powerful order in the world, were no more. Their destruction was a ruthless act of political consolidation. The Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, who had retracted his forced confession, was brought out to be executed. It is a reminder of how quickly power can be corrupted, and how easily fear and propaganda can be used to destroy an enemy. The Templars created a system that would change the world. They became the first bankers of Europe, but their greatest innovation was not military. It was financial. Their network of commanderies, or chapter houses, stretched from London and Paris all the way to Jerusalem. A nobleman could deposit his gold at the Templar house in London and receive a coded letter of credit. Once in Jerusalem, he could present his letter to the Templars there and withdraw the equivalent sum. Kings, nobles, and merchants all began to use the Templars as their personal bank. They owned vast tracts of land, vineyards, and farms across Europe. But their success bred jealousy and suspicion. The Templars were forced to retreat from the Holy Land. They were now a powerful, secretive organization with no clear purpose, based in the heart of Europe. That man was King Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair. He saw their immense wealth as a solution to his own financial problems. Working with his corrupt ministers, King Philip devised a devious and brutal plan. He began spreading dark rumors. The charges were shocking and designed to create public outrage. Then, he set his trap. In a massive coordinated military operation, all the Knights Templar in France were arrested at dawn. The Templars were thrown into dungeons and subjected to brutal torture by the king's inquisitors. Under this unimaginable agony, many knights confessed to the false charges leveled against them. These forced confessions were then used by King Philip as proof of the order's guilt. The Pope was weak and essentially a puppet of the French king. Many Templars who later tried to retract their confessions were condemned as relapsed heretics and were burned at the stake. It was a reign of terror. Finally, in 1312, under immense pressure from King Philip, Pope Clement V officially dissolved the Knights Templar order forever. The last act of this tragedy took place in Paris in 1314. He was slow-burned at the stake on an island in the river Seine, in full view of the royal palace. With his dying breath, he summoned King Philip and Pope Clement to join him before God's judgment within the year. The great wealth of the Templars was seized by the King of France. Their lands were given to another rival order, but their legend has endured for centuries, fueled by the mystery of their lost treasure and the secrets they supposedly possessed. Stories of the Templars guarding the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, or other sacred relics continue to fascinate us to this day. But the true story is one of political greed and the abuse of power. They were a state within a state, and King Philip could not tolerate a rival to his absolute authority. The charges of heresy and devil worship were almost certainly lies, a convenient excuse to seize their wealth and eliminate a powerful institution. The story of their downfall serves as a dark cautionary tale. It marks the end of the age of the Crusades and the rise of the powerful nation-states of Europe. A new world was being born. The Knights Templar, the holy warriors who had once defended Christendom, became the victims of a new kind of crusade, one waged for gold and political power. Their dramatic rise and catastrophic fall remain one of the most compelling and tragic chapters in medieval history.